Welcome back to the Broto Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Tim, here with Mike and Matt, and today we're going to be discussing the 2016 redraft. We're going to go over the player grades of these guys and go back so we can inform ourselves for this upcoming draft. We also got the latest news, Odell Beckham, Aaron Rodgers, what's going on with these guys. But before we get started, we want to say download, please download the free for a limited time Fantasy Football by Broto app. On the app, you get fantasy player cards, the fantasy player grades that we're about to talk about, usage tools, a start sit tool, and a who to draft tool, and all the tools you need. Podcast, this one, consistency charts, game logs, coaching tendencies, articles, rankings, waivers, and every single advanced stat you need, including true throw value, true target value, true performance value, adjusted air yards, and true matchup rankings, which is exclusive to Broto, baby. And right now, the player comps, the most important tool of today, is live, and everyone is there. The tight ends have finally made it to the running backs and wide receivers. Everything you need to know about your future dynasty assets in the 5-player comp.
Tim, you just turned mad New York. The most important.
Well, the
Before
most
you
important
fix
thing we
before
could
it.
do is before Michael just loves ruining intros. Just loves ruining them. Just loves it. Michael, shut up.
I'm the most.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Broto Fantasy Football Podcast presented by BrotoFantasy.com and the Fantasy Football by Broto app, the only tool you need to dominate fantasy football. Yeah, that's right, Michael. Don't forget who's in the host chair, baby. Took with the clicks. All right, ruining my intro. I was
damn you.
My wife always tells me that I have the most Queens accent of anyone she's ever met, and she grew up in Queens. So I don't know why that's surprising to you. My wife, the person who lives with
growing up in Bayside is different than growing up in like a Bayside. Let's be real.
That's true. Different types of Queens.
Yes.
There's different types of Queens there. But still. Anyway.
People from Queens are listening. You know what we're talking about.
Guys, I'm excited to get into today. But before I get into today, I also want to say, what's good, Matt? Matt, we haven't even heard from you yet. Man. What's going on,
what
bro?
up? I'm feeling
the whole
good.
team's
I'm
here.
so happy to be back. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. I've been holding it down on my own and with some incredible guests on the Dynasty Dawn, but it's so fun to be back on this one. I can't wait to get into it, and it's just incredible chopping it up with you guys.
Before we get started, I also want to give a little plug to what's coming up. We talked about the player comps and how they're finally complete. Santiago Casanova has this system, all right? He's a mathematician, and he puts everything you need to make player comps into this tool, and you get 5 different player comps with different levels of confidence of how they compare to that player. So you're not just going to get like, oh, this person in the last one we talked about Kevin White, and people talking about Kevin White, his most comparable is Andre Johnson and Hakeem Nicks. Like, oh, I wonder why. They're the same size. That's it. That's the only similarity that they have. So like Santiago Casanova, the man, the myth, the mathematician, he puts everything that we know that you need to predict the outcomes of these players, puts it into a formula, and makes these comps. And he's going to be on to talk about that even more with Matt on Monday for the Dynasty Don version of the podcast. All right, so a little bit of a preview there. Cass, you got to ask Cass about what's been going on in his life. Because he's been living a crazy life the last few months, and he's doing the right.
He's a thespian.
He's living life correctly. I'll say that, and through that, he also is the man behind the Broto algorithms. Yeah, the Broto fam, Cass is going to be on.
Word up.
Yeah, so everyone knows. If you're listening right now, you know Cass. All right, so 2 big pieces of pieces of news that I just want to touch on today. The first one is Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham signs with the Ravens. And when they say that the cap is fake, deals like this are what they mean. They just signed him to a 1-year deal that was a 5-year deal that they voided in order to make the signing bonus stretch out over the course of 5 years. So instead of getting a cap hit of $18 million this year, he has a cap hit of just over $3 million.
$13 million was the signing bonus. He could earn $5 million more in incentives.
He could earn up to $8 million annually.
Yes.
Yes.
So, what
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying though here.
I
And
can't
yes,
believe
it's not that the cap is fake. It's that
it's
the
fake.
guys writing
can be
these contracts
manipulated.
are legitimately lawyers. Like they are
Yeah.
contract lawyers, and they are the best contract lawyers, not in America, on planet Earth.
You emphasize the con and contract. I thought you were gonna say they're cons, and I was like, they
Well,
kind of are.
that's. I mean, I think that was a Freudian slip almost there because
All
it's
right,
true.
so
Yeah.
all right, listen, let's save it for the conspiracy podcast. All right, but let's talk about fantasy
Tim's
football.
favorite.
Yeah, you're right. Me and Matt should do a conspiracy. I bet you Matt and I could talk conspiracies for like
I have so many
4
conspiracy
straight hours.
football conspires
Oh yeah,
specifically
oh yeah.
You guys are
We
wild.
need to do this one of these days.
Wild
that
animals.
involve
you
the
two.
Saints specifically.
All right, so Odell to the Ravens. A little bit of a surprising move. There was reports that said he called the Jets after the Ravens offered him this. Is like, yo, I got to take this. If you can match it, I'll sign with you. And they declined that.
Yeah,
So
good.
okay, so Michael not letting his feelings be held back in any way. How you feeling?
I mean,
about this?
OBJ. Look, we all know he was a star. Emphasis on was. He's since dealt with 2 major injuries. He's old now in terms of the wide receiver curve. Like, what are you doing giving him this much money on a 1-year deal? It's desperation. It's a desperation contract. Like, I hope Lamar Jackson can stay with us, because why else would you pay OBJ that much money? And they just don't trust their front office to draft wide receivers because they haven't had an actual wide receiver in years. I just
I mean,
think
Hollywood
it
Brown.
just smells desperation all over. Yeah, and then they traded Hollywood Brown.
I mean, he demanded a trade.
Pretty wild to hit a gold mine like that late in the second and then just be like bye bye.
Yeah, stupid, so dumb.
But things and
Yeah,
such.
I mean, I think the most important thing about this OBJ news is that you saw on Instagram him and Lamar Jackson kind of being like, "Oh, it's coming, it's going down soon." So maybe this is good news that maybe this is the good faith move that the Ravens needed to show Lamar Jackson. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is like, "Hey, look, sign this franchise tag, get your guaranteed money this year, take another year if you stay healthy, then we'll give you the money. And here's a guy to help you do that." So maybe this is the good faith move that Lamar and the Ravens needed to reconnect.
But it's like, yo, oh, sorry, Lamar Jackson, we don't want to pay you as much as we can. You know what? Let's throw way too much money at a wide receiver now.
It's business, bro.
But it's extra money that they're spending when
But
they
it's
don't
also-
want to spend extra money on Lamar.
They're
It's also
spending $4
simple
million on him
economics.
this year.
It is like it is a 1-year deal with like nothing future guaranteed after that. They'll obviously have some dead cap hits with his signing bonuses extended, but it's economics. Like you're talking about 3 years 33 for Jacoby when you don't know what your cap situation is to be able to extend Lamar in the first place, and 3 years 33 for Juju. Like those are the top paid wide receivers coming off the market. So you're getting a guy that obviously isn't in the same tier of talent, I think, as either one of those guys. And obviously, we can debate about Jacoby and Juju as well, but no, Lamar or OBJ rather isn't in that healthy, peaking 25, 26-year-old wide receiver position, but he is a wide receiver on the market that can accept a deal that allows them to open up the cap for future years for Lamar.
True. And it is,
And it's not like it was a great wide receiver market.
I was gonna say, Matt, is there any
Yeah.
I know Michael, Michael is with his Michael's coming out swinging. We're starting a little late today behind the scenes. And you could tell Michael's a little annoyed. So he's coming out swinging today.
It's you want the behind the scenes.
Classic
Me and Matt said classic Tim when he was about a half hour late to our planned time.
Hey, I always want to say this. I didn't just show up a half an hour late. I was
We were having
contact with
audio,
you guys.
but the audio issues has a lot to do with just classic Tim. It's always you.
The audio issues sometimes are you though.
And I'm just playing with you, Tim. I'm just playing with you.
All right.
I'm actually just like, you see, I'm like red.
Yeah, I know
from
you got tan playing
basketball the last 2 days. I played for like
hooping
3 hours today, and I got home and I was like, oh my god, I'm dead.
It was almost 90 degrees in New York City today.
Yes, it was.
I love it.
It was
Get some of
fantastic.
this.
I was
glorious.
outdoors all day. Took the kids to the park.
Summer.
It was very nice. All right, so let's put a little sunshine on this though. Matt, is there any upside to this move?
On a cloudy day.
I mean, Yeah. As long as Lamar comes back, if it leads to Lamar playing for them in 2023, then mission accomplished. That's really
Fair
that's
enough.
it.
Let me.
As far
So
as
we
like
already talked about that. Let me rephrase the question. Do you think that OBJ? What kind of success do you think OBJ can have this
segueing
season?
myself into it.
My bad. My bad. Go ahead.
As far as his production is concerned, and specifically his value on your fantasy rosters, like maybe some flex weeks, you're probably going to see some boom as well when the touchdowns do come. But I don't think that OBJ is going to step into a 25%, 20% target share. I think he's going to linger around 15 to 17, even as he did with his, positive weeks of production with the Rams. But a lot of those positive weeks were tied to touchdowns, and unpredictable as that production may be, the Ravens don't even know who the quarterback is. So we can't really predict how many touchdowns or how good or well that offense will function. It's very minimal. I think you're talking flex level, and he might, at his best, have a 100-yard, 2-touchdown game type of explosion. But it is still a 32-year-old wide receiver coming off of 2 ACL injuries, and that hasn't played football
Yeah.
really consecutively for 5 seasons.
I feel like at this point, the OBJ is just gonna keep once he starts throwing to Lamar Jackson and videos go up and it's like they're gonna be lethal this season. People are gonna start bumping OBJ up into like their top 24 wide receivers, and it's gonna be absurd. And he's gonna be an easy pass on draft day.
That's why you listen to Broda. I mean, in a world where OBJ becomes an elite guy again, I feel like that
An
would
unlikely world.
light the world on fire. I feel like that
An
would be
unlikely world. A
main
very
thing.
unlikely world.
All right.
Yeah, I feel like that same world has Rashad Bateman dominating and getting 1,400 yards and 20 touchdowns. Like, it's a market share thing. If
Hot
OBJ
damn.
is putting up 1,000, it means Lamar's MVP again. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah, it's just the offense. Right,
I do not disagree.
new offensive coordinator this year, so that should be noted. No more Greg Roman offense. So
Fine.
Man, but like the Greg Roman hate pisses me off because when Lamar won MVP, everyone was like, Greg Roman is a fucking genius. Everyone should go and get
Yeah.
Greg Roman. And then it's like 2 years later when it's not working as well, get rid of Greg Roman. Everyone just like forgets these things that they're just so.
I do. I mean, you have
But
to blame someone.
but I also don't.
I know.
I don't think that's revisionist history necessarily. Like, I think it worked, but then you don't make adjustments for 2 full seasons, and it's like, okay,
Fair enough,
all right,
but
fine.
you do have to run a certain offense with Lamar Jackson, and
That's true too.
and their pass catching weapons were an absolute joke last season. Let's be real.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that Lamar Jackson ever touches what he like the way Greg Roman schemed that entire offense that year. There's a chance that Lamar Jackson doesn't touch that again if he goes into a more traditional either run first quarterback offense or a pass first quarterback offense. We haven't seen him do it yet.
We'll see.
We still got to see him do it. All right, so let's get into the second piece of news that I want to talk about. All right, the Aaron Rodgers saga has dragged along, and there was a report today that said what's holding things up is that the Packers want a second-round pick this year, one of 2 that the Jets have after moving Elijah Moore, and a first-round pick next year. The Jets are like, hold on. We want to give you a conditional pick based on whether Aaron Rodgers plays or not. Michael, let me ask you this question. Are you getting nervous as a Jets fan? Are you starting to feel, look at all this Jets,
if you could put
paraphernalia in the back. I didn't even realize there was so much Jets shit back here.
Yeah. Hashtag go Jets. Look, if you could rate me on a scale of nervousness from 0 to 10, where 0 is not nervous at all and 10 is very nervous, I'm at a whopping 0. I have absolutely. I think.
No, that makes me nervous.
Bro,
that Michael's so confident. It makes me nervous.
This is all just everyone because it's April and everyone wants a story so bad. Aaron Rodgers is clearly the main attraction, and stories just keep getting made up. Craig Carton and his dumbass self decides he's going to make up a rumor that the 49ers are going to go after Aaron Rodgers. Like, come on, bro. Aaron Rodgers, the best player in Green Bay Packers history, won them a Super Bowl, says, my time is up. You're the ones who drafted the quarterback 3 years ago instead of an impact player. Says, I want to go play for the Jets. That franchise is going to just shit on him and say, no, that's not happening. 0% chance. Aaron Rodgers is a Jet. Joe Douglas 3 days ago said, yes, Aaron Rodgers is coming to the Jets.
Here's
Like
here's
it's just so silly to me. And people think he's not going to end up as a Jet. Who cares what the Jets give him? It's not going to be a first-round pick because the Packers have no leverage here. Aaron Rodgers said he's going to be a Jet. Give him a second-round pick, give him a third-round pick, whatever. He's going to be a Jet. Period.
2 seconds. It's going to cost at least 2, but yeah.
You think 2 seconds? You mean one this year, one next year?
I think both of them this year could get it done. And why wouldn't you do that? What are you drafting in the second? Like, you got Brees Hall, you have Garrett Wilson. The offensive talent has fallen apart. Obviously,
Brees Hall was a second-round pick.
no, that's what I mean. But like
pick.
that's kind of my point is you already used those picks, moved up, you got the leverage back with Elijah Moore, which is incredible that they got that much back for him. I think that's awesome that they were smart enough to hold on so that his in-season issues didn't reduce that leverage to where they literally got back what they invested in a player that didn't want to be there at all.
Yeah, I agree.
That's pretty incredible. And and obviously a high pick because Cleveland wasn't very good. And yeah, like I do think that could potentially, be the pushing factor in what actually is the final deal on paper with maybe some other compensation attached, minimal at that. But yeah, the 2 seconds this year for the Jets, I think with their defense as solidified as it is and the offensive talent kind of being pushed into 2 tiers, and that is the top end tier of obviously the guys that are going to go in the first round, and then that tier of everybody's equal. So you just start seeing a huge run of running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers in the third.
I get where you're coming from. I wouldn't give up 2 seconds this year if I was the Jets.
I don't
just
think
because
it's going to happen.
Yeah, just because that first round pick needs to be an offensive line. The Jets' offensive line is not where it needs to be right now. They don't even have a starting center.
Yeah, you keep the first too.
You gotta get the first, and then you have your 2 seconds. Those are premier picks. Those are top 50 picks, right? Those are early picks. So when
considering the Packers want an unprotected first, I think that's probably the deal you're gonna end up seeing on paper.
But so there's a lot of debate going on who has the leverage. Is it the Packers or is it the Jets? If let's say this thing drags out and they can't come to an agreement, what are the Packers' options? The Packers' options are you can either start Aaron Rodgers, which I feel like is just not even an option at this point, right? Then you can just bench him and just have him in purgatory. You're going to hold hostage the best player in the history of your franchise with a $50 million cap hit almost.
Yes,
right?
That's what I'm saying.
So the third option there is you're going to release him. And if you release him, you got to eat that cap hit, and he's just going to sign with the Jets anyway. So I feel like the leverage here is just not in the Jets. It's not in the Packers' favor. So I don't see. I think it's going to be a second this year and a conditional second next year. That's what I think.
I don't like to speak in absolutes, but there's a 99% chance Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Jet. I really don't think it's even a question.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying I think the compensation on paper is going to be somewhere in that middle range where it's unprotected value that they can accrue
even that
right
I think
now.
Even that I think is too much, but that I'll see. I'm not as confident in the compensation part of it, but we'll see.
Fun fact, every single New York team has made the playoffs except the Jets in their current season or their season that just passed. Every New York team made the playoffs except the Jets, who have not been to the playoffs in 12 years. So I want to throw that out there.
Right.
All right, let's get into our main event today. Now, we got the draft guru here, and he's been talking about the prospects. There he is right there. Oh, yeah. He's been talking about the prospects for you on the Dynasty Don. If you haven't been checking out the Dynasty Don, which that would be, what are you doing? Go check out the Dynasty Don. That's where you're going to get everything you need for your Dynasty knowledge. He had the last episode was a really good one where you went through your top, basically your first round guys, so top 12 guys, and that was very educational. Even for me, this guy's he's the guy. He's the guy. We got him right here, right there. I don't know if it's on the same spot in yours, but right there.
That's where it is for me.
So listen to that. But today we have to go back and see what worked out, what didn't, because the only way to know what's happening in the future is to know what happened in the past. Follow the trends. Learn. The past informs the future. Informs. Doesn't predict, but informs. So let's inform ourselves today. And last episode, we did a draft review of the 2016 drafts, and we did it with player grades. Now, what are player grades? It is a Brodo exclusive stat, yes, exclusive metric that assigns a letter grade based on a player's overall fantasy output and how it's stacked up against others in his position. It takes into account a whole bunch of things, including what the player was expected to do, ADP. It's also a little predictive, right? So if a player has done things 3 years in a row, he's more likely to continue that streak than others. Little things like that. We don't want to give away the sauce too much. But all players with 5+ games played in a year and with at least 6+ points per game in a given season are graded. Now, if you got under 6, you're not even an F. We don't have time for people who have under 6 points per game. They're not fantasy usable. So I went back into the 2016 draft. Now, remember, we did the 15 draft last time, and we went into the 2016 draft, and we looked at just the players who were fantasy viable players. So no defensive players, no offensive linemen, just the quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. That's it. In each of these drafts. So what we did was I looked at the first round, and in the first round, we get everyone who might be, and then we extended the second round for running backs because we know that the second round for running backs is usually, that's where their first round is at. All right. So now that I've said the rules, let's get into this draft review. Are you fellas ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So after trading the farm to get up to this pick, round 1 pick one, Jared Goff, chosen by the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, Jared Goff's career. His career fantasy average is a C-. That's a 66.3 in 6 eligible seasons. He did have an A- season in 2018, but also had an F season in 2021. Look, first overall pick. He was kind of like the golden boy. They traded up for him. He had a rough rookie season under Jeff Fisher. But when Sean McVay came, it looked like superstardom was in the process for him. He had an A fantasy grade, then grade. It looked like it was essential. They signed him to a $100 million deal, but then it kind of fell off a cliff. In 2019, his fantasy grade was a C. In 2020, it was a D-. He got traded to the Lions. His first year with the Lions was an absolute disaster. And I mean, he really did a good job bouncing back last year. QB 12. No one had him predicted in their top 12 last year. So Jared Goff, his career arc is kind of unique because he went from a guy who was so highly touted that and had these games like the game against Patrick Mahomes, had these incredible games where I think he became a little overrated, like very overrated, where people were starting to put him in the top 5 conversation. I remember when I was on another podcast, one of the podcast hosts was insisting that he was in the top 5, and we were having a back and forth about it. And so people were putting him in that top 5 category. I don't think he was never ever there, right? But at the same time, people were then putting him in the bottom 5 category coming into this season after a really rough year with the Lions the year before. And I don't think he was in that category either. And this year, yes, he had Amon-Ra St. Brown, but Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 5th round pick, so not like one of these crazy athletes that comes out of college. A 5th round pick, obviously a good player, but he had DJ Chark, who was always injured on the outside, DeAndre Swift, who was always injured. He was not surrounded. TJ Hawkinson was traded mid-season. He was not surrounded by a great supporting cast, and that was one of the best offenses in the league all year. And a lot of that had to do with Jared Goff. So obviously still going into the season with the Lions as a starter. Round 1, pick 1 for the Rams, Jared Goff. Michael, how are you feeling about this first overall pick in this draft?
I mean, you spoke a lot about Jared Goff, Tim, so I'm not sure there's much to add here, but I will say that
he was
Jared
going
Goff,
off on Goff.
Yeah, I will say that Jared Goff, like if you're a Rams fan, he was, I don't know if you'd consider him a bust. I mean, he did lead them to, almost to the promised land. And he had several good seasons with them. Obviously didn't work out as planned. Like when you draft a guy first overall, you want him to be the franchise quarterback for 10 years. But I don't think, I don't know. If I was a Rams fan, I wouldn't be completely pissed off about Jared Goff, and how that ended up going. But and for fantasy, he's been up and down, but I think a C minus grade is a little unfair. I think it's weighing his bad seasons too heavily. He's had some decent seasons, and he's never been really like a piece of garbage that you can't even use in like 2 quarterback leagues.
He's
Except
finished
maybe
as a
1 year.
he's finished as a QB1 3 times in 6
Yeah.
start. He was a starter for 6 seasons.
Yeah,
That's fair.
I think
But I mean,
that's better than C
I do want to
minus.
say something about like cost acquisition as far as real life NFL draft capital, and it does kind of, these theories do bleed a little bit over into dynasty drafts, of course. But when it comes to Jared Goff and kind of super flex value, like when you're looking at rookies like that, you got Jared Goff, was certainly the best quarterback in this class, in my opinion. At least as far as the first round picks go. Now, obviously, there's a later hit here that we'll talk about soon,
Yeah.
but that position is considered so irreplaceable, and that's also why you see it as like the highest amount of busts are in the first round. Well, that's because there's only 1 or 2 quarterbacks selected in the 4th. So for the amount of capital that they put in and trading up for this pick, like obviously all of that in hindsight, not the best, but Jared Goff at 1-1 in this class, when considered the cost value of every other pick, I don't think it's actually that terrible. It's hard to get franchise quarterbacks, man. Real hard.
Yeah, it is.
There's only like 10 to 15 at a time. 15 is like, if you really,
yeah, I was
if
just
you
about to say
really
15
want to
is like
squeeze,
kind of really
like
pushing
if
it,
you
in my
want to
opinion, but-
include like a Kirk Cousins, it's like a franchise
Right,
type of
that's
guy,
what
which is
yeah.
just like is pushing it. It's really only
Mhm,
10
exactly.
to 15 of these guys that you actually like could trust, maybe even
That's
less.
what and at one point in time, he was absolutely a franchise quarterback. I mean, he did have 2 seasons of over 4,000 passing yards, 32 touchdowns. The one season led them to a Super Bowl. So you would consider that a franchise quarterback. And leading to a Super Bowl on a rookie contract, obviously, is, you have to consider that a hit from an NFL.
I mean, that's
value
the plan.
perspective. Yeah, exactly. That's the end from an NFL value perspective. You have to consider that a hit. You did exactly what you were supposed to do with that pick in a 4-year window. Extending him was probably not a great idea.
I mean, technically, he was the reason that they won a Super Bowl at the quarterback position. So technically,
that is true as well.
Technically, he did his job, like from the quarterback position.
No, but like that's from every like honestly, from a business standpoint, that pick worked out 100%. There's no way you could deny it. Led them to a Super Bowl and then returned a Super Bowl in return value on the market.
I mean, that's how you do it right there. How you don't do it. How you don't do it is with the next pick. Also, a haul traded up by the Philadelphia Eagles in the first year of Doug Peterson to get Carson Wentz, a quarterback whose career average fantasy grade is a D-, 55.9 in 7 eligible seasons. He started right away. His highest single season fantasy grade was an A in the fateful 2017 season, and his lowest single season fantasy grade was last season, actually, an F with the Commanders. So, I mean, this is another guy, looked like he was going to be a superstar early, got a fantasy grade of A, looked like he was going to be an MVP season, and then he dove into the end zone in week 13 and tore his ACL, and he was kind of never the same again. If you remember the vintage.
Not against Jared Goff?
Sure.
I'm pretty sure it was against the Rams.
I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Almost positive.
How ironic.
Let's run with it. So look, his whole persona, what he was a giant athletic freak, and that's what made him so good in those 13 games, because he would get out of these ridiculous situations. He would just not get sacked. Now, he took a lot of sacks, but he would find ways out of it, make crazy superstar plays, and that really carried him. But then, after he tore his ACL, he's never really a pocket passer guy. He was a throwing guy in 2009. I'm sorry, a throwing on the run type of guy. In 2019, fell off completely. 16 TDs, 15 INTs in 12 games. Got traded. Colts, Commanders. He's not even on a team right now. Matt, why don't you start us off here? For me, Carson Wentz is a sad story. It's a cautionary tale of what can happen when one of your greatest assets is taken away from you as an athlete. How do you look back at Carson Wentz's career from this draft?
Yeah, and I mean, just to not correct myself, but give myself a pat on the back, it was against the Rams in week 14 that he tore that ACL, which is incredibly
the
ironic.
encyclopedia.
But yeah, I mean, Carson Wentz, obviously, to go back to a little bit of that Jared Goff philosophy, is this is the cost also that it takes to pay up and attempt
Yeah.
to get a franchise quarterback on that rookie contract. And that's also why you see teams continuously make the mistake, and so many guys become first round busts because teams are willing to pay up for this. It's also viewed that, like, it's undeniably the most important position, but you can find above replacement level players at every other position later on in the draft. You
Yeah.
can't do that with quarterbacks. At least historically, they don't. Until you start seeing the NFL draft differently, that will never be the case either. You're not going to find a bunch of Dak Prescotts. You're never going to. There's, only so many Steve Youngs. And with that said, I think Carson Wentz in the first place was a bad pick. Coming from a small school, he would have been the first round quarterback, the first ever quarterback selected from San Diego State, or North Dakota State,
North
rather.
Dakota. Yeah.
Yeah. The first ever first round quarterback selected from that school, played incredibly weak competition the entire time that he was there. Athletically, again, like Tim said, he kind of had some of those freaky unicorn traits that you like, but when you're also dealing with an asset like that, it doesn't have the same security that a guy like we could even say Jared Goff, because of the pure passing. So Carson Wentz, being a toolsy quarterback that you needed to develop, that relied so heavily on his athleticism to be successful, I think is going to always be a really risky pick. It's always going to be a risky pick. And now that you're seeing the way that the contract situation is playing out with Lamar Jackson, the talk with Anthony Richardson's situation, whether he's actually worth top 10 draft capital, a lot of teams think he is. A lot of teams think he isn't, as far as talking heads are concerned. It really is starting to bring into that question. If you can't develop a quarterback quickly on that 5-year window, or if, God forbid, injury were to happen, then are they really worth trading the farm for?
I gotta say, Anthony Richardson, for me, I know I haven't had a lot of time to talk about these rookies. Anthony Richardson is a stay as far away from me as you can type deal. If I'm a GM, or if I'm a dynasty, like I'm not buying into all this. Like, look, he never put a single dominant game on tape in college. Never. He has individual plays. He doesn't have any dominant games in college. You're gonna spend the number 4 overall pick on that guy? No, that's not
Or
gonna
higher,
happen.
even.
Just so you guys know, we keep talking about the haul that the Eagles gave up. The Browns that were originally in that second pick. The Eagles got the Browns' first round pick back in 2026, and a 4th round pick in 2007 in exchange for the number 8 pick, which is the Eagles pick, the number 77 pick in the 3rd round, 4th round number 100 pick. So they got in exchange 2 additional top 100 picks and a 1st round pick in 2017 and a 2nd round pick in 2018. They were the Browns, so it didn't matter. But with that being said, that franchise did turn themselves around on the strength of partially on the strength of that trade. All right, let's get started talking about turning a franchise around. The 4th pick overall, and this one, like I said, I love to go back and watch old drafts. This one was controversial at the time. Everyone thought that the Cowboys were going to take Jalen Ramsey. They were staring Jalen Ramsey down the barrel. Then they went left and took Ezekiel Elliott from Ohio State. And all he's done in his 7 eligible seasons with the Cowboys is have a B+ fantasy rating. That is honestly too low because last year he did not do himself any favors. His highest single season fantasy grade was an A+ in 2018, a 99.2 overall. And when you're known as one name, Zeke, as one name, you're one of the great ones. All right, Jordan, LeBron, Brady, Zeke. All right, that's how much of a great one he was for fantasy. 3 straight A+ seasons, and 3 A+ seasons and 1 A in his first 4 seasons. He averaged an insane 125 all-purpose yards per game and 12 touchdowns per season during that run. He was the clear number 1. He was a clear first round pick every single one of those years, and always paid off every single year. Now he did slow down a little bit, but I mean, this is a guy who also averaged 3.5 catches per game during that time. He had 77 catches in 2018. The definition of a dual threat. Now, Tony Pollard came through and kind of showed that he was the best of the best. In any full season that Zeke has been graded, he has never finished below an A until last year when he was a D. He's currently a free agent, but he'll no doubt find a home. Michael, we're going to start with you because you're zero running back. Come on, man. Zeke.
Yeah,
man.
look, I mean, we could debate the benefits or lack thereof of drafting a running back 4th overall for hours if we wanted to. I'm not going to get into that with you right now, Tim. But the Cowboys did it, and you can't really ask for a better turnout if you are going to make that decision. Like you said, Zeke was an absolute monster for his first 4 years in the league. He absolutely run into the ground. Like, we know why he isn't that good anymore. It's because the Cowboys said, Zeke, just take the ball as often as you can. And Zeke said, okay.
Led the league in touches in 2018 as well.
Yeah. I mean, he was absolutely tremendous for the Cowboys throughout his entire tenure. Even last season when he wasn't really full Zeke, he was still finding the end zone a ton as like a brute force type of guy, while Tony Pollard was doing most of the midfield work. But look, Zeke, and I'm not going to say it was a great pick in real life because it was a 4th overall pick, but for fantasy, obviously he was a superstar for years and certainly worth every penny. And if you are going to take a running back top 5 overall, you better hope it's a guy who ends up playing at the level Zeke played.
Probably a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're being honest, Zeke is honestly probably a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. For the running back position, like, you don't need to be a star for 10 years.
And that gets my dynasty mind churning. Like, Ezekiel Elliott was as generational of a collegiate prospect as you could possibly ask for. He's the greatest pure runner that I've ever personally seen, like, in my 30 years of watching college football, or I mean, I guess not that long. That's how old I am, but call it 20 years. You know, one of the greatest pure runners I've ever seen on a college football field. He was an absolute stud. He checked all of the boxes. And from a dynasty perspective, like, what more do you want? Like, you literally had an NFL team tell you with top 5 draft capital, like, look, this is the best possible asset that we can give you as a dynasty manager in the window that you expect running backs to produce in, and that's within their first 4 seasons.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah, obviously, in my opinion, a phenomenal asset for cost acquisition as far as fantasy is concerned. Football acquisition and obviously the extension that quite literally will like in 25 years, there's going to be an ESPN 30 for 30 about how Ezekiel Elliott broke a running back market that still has yet to reach that level of money plus inflation. Like,
yeah, he was he would get 90 million, right?
Yeah, it'll never happen again. It will never happen again.
Jerry Jones loves the guy. Loves the guy.
I mean, good for him getting his bag, but he ruined running backs even be able to get paid close to that money.
You know, now that we're talking a little shit about running backs, I do want to have a little propaganda as well. We're doing 2015, 2016. So far, I will say this. The only thing that you can count on is that early picked running backs are going to hit. Like, that's really, like, so far, every single running back has hit. If you drafted all the running backs from 2015 and 2016 and completely passed on quarterback and wide receiver and tight end, you have a
Tim,
dynasty.
You're killing me, bro.
You have 5 straight championships in dynasty. Am I lying? Tell me if I'm lying.
There's a reason why the number 1 running back goes like 1st or 2nd overall in every fucking dynasty draft. And there's a reason why they get drafted highly in the NFL. It's because they're very good. But stop acting like wide receivers are less important, or like, you just pissed me off. They have a longer shelf life.
You know what's really
I think Mike makes
off?
a great point, because if there was an Ezekiel Elliott playing wide receiver, if Megatron goes
Jamar
5th,
Chase.
I'm taking Megatron over. Exactly. Like, it's just depending. It's all cost equivalency to who is in this draft class. There isn't
I'm just saying the highest percentage hit rate is early drafted running backs. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, they usually work out pretty good.
They work out really well. So far, so good. Let's talk about these wide receivers, because sometimes there's Jamar Chase, and sometimes you go on a run like this.
These trash bags.
Ready? Corey Coleman in the 15th pick. Will Fuller, Laquan Treadwell. I'm sorry, Josh Doxson, Laquan Treadwell. All right, let's go in order real quick. Yeah, I
We
know.
don't even have to. Yeah, just
We
touch
don't need to
on
talk
these
about it.
guys.
What is
Corey
it? Is it
Coleman
F
with the
F
15th
F
pick.
F?
Will Fuller.
Except Will Fuller, man. I don't know what happened to
minus.
that guy.
Will Fuller had an A year, and was he kidnapped? I'm
yeah.
not joking,
He's the ghost of Christmas past. Will
bro.
Fuller.
It's so he got hit for the PED suspension.
Yeah.
He missed the last 4 games, and then he missed the first game of the next season. He had like under 100 yards in the next 2 games. Hurt his finger. Legit has not been heard from. I did an internet. I wrote an article that's also coming, like a sister article for this. Go check it out, brotofantasy.com and the Fantasy Football by Broto app. But I did like a little internet scour, and every single team has a blogger that says Will Fuller is 5 guys that teams should take a swing on because it could hit, man. Those guys, those bloggers, and every single one of them has an article about Will Fuller. Every team. But is there any Will Fuller? Has anyone seen
Will
How
Fuller?
bad is that broken finger? We still don't know. I mean, maybe he could never catch a football again. Bad.
Yeah,
where
Tim,
is
you
he?
think it's as bad as your finger? Put your finger up to the camera.
Oh no, this is bad. I don't have it.
Oh, you don't have the
wrapped.
wrap?
We'd have
you
to
don't
put
have
it.
the
We'd have
wrapper
to
on?
censor it for YouTube.
Yeah, we'd have
Yeah.
to censor from YouTube.
TVMA. You might as well whip
Yeah.
out your fucking,
No, I can't. Yeah, I can't do it. But I'll show you after.
What I mean, folks, is that Tim cut off a tiny piece of his finger cutting cilantro recently.
Quite a large piece, and I'm a chef.
Yeah.
It was about a quarter inch. I
That's what she
sliced
Not like
it.
the on
clean
the
off.
on the side ish though. No bone. Thankfully.
Yes, but do you know what
That's
I'm
what she said.
realizing now that I have my thumb back? Like I do have, it just has a little scab on it. Like I'm pretty much using my thumb at this point. It was about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. It's the exact spot where your thumb hits when you're texting. So my typos have been even worse. It's like I'm missing a quarter inch from what I used to tap. So I gotta move my finger up a little bit.
And
I'm
how many
missing a
times do I have to
quarter
drop
inch.
it? That's what she said in this episode.
Hey, that's a good one there.
All right. So anyway, Corey Coleman was a complete bust. We don't got to talk about him. Will Fuller, we just talked about him. Josh Doxson, what a
I think
trash.
Josh Doxson, trash. TCU wide receivers that don't accrue over 1.0 yards per offensive play at any point in time throughout their career, trash. There's a couple of them, so watch out. I'm not going to name drop anybody.
Because there's another one that's coming out in the draft this year. That
Might be.
yeah, you could say it, man.
Might be.
You could say it. You can do it.
Quentin
There you
Johnson's
go. Quentin Johnson.
never done it, and neither did Jalen Reagor. And it's really interesting because all 3 of those players have over 2.0 yards of receiving per team pass attempt, and that's what everybody analytically likes to look at. But yeah, it's a weird trend for TCU wide receivers. It's kind of interesting that a coach doesn't trust first round NFL wide receivers to get more touches than non-drafted running backs. But
You know what I just realized? TCU is literally the anti-Ohio State. They're like the non-wide receiver U.
yeah,
Everyone is a bust.
Yeah, everyone, all high end picks are
literally,
busts.
every first round wide receiver from TCU has never worked out.
Speaking of high end busts, this guy might be the worst.
That's what she said.
This guy might be the worst pick ever. Round 1, pick 26, Paxton Lynch, quarterback of the Denver
I mean,
Broncos.
out of
I'm
Memphis, I feel like
taking it.
that was always
Hit me with the
just
fantasy grades because I'm
Yeah.
taking this one after you.
Nothing.
literally none.
Literally
Never
no grades.
registered.
He did not. He only
No.
played 2 seasons. Kind of
Perfect.
4 starts in the NFL. He threw 4 TDs and 4 interceptions. Last time we saw Lynch on the field, he was benched by the San Antonio Brahmas of the XFL in week 2 of the season. So that's what he's doing.
John Elway has an obsession with 6'6" quarterbacks that can't actually play the position, and I
Brock
think there's a
Osweiler,
conspiracy
baby.
that we could bring up in one of the conspiracy episodes where John Elway was just trying to place bad quarterbacks in the starting position in Denver, so nobody could ever take his records.
I like that one.
And why did
I
he
like
trade
that
for
one.
Russell Wilson? He knew Russell Wilson was.
Well, I
toast,
mean,
bro.
eventually, yeah.
He's like, nah, he's toast, bro. Go get him. Go get him.
He's officially not even involved with them anymore.
That's what I was going to say. I was by that time he wasn't. But Paxton Lynch, like one of the dynasty perspectives that I want to bring up, out of Memphis small school. Again, we saw a kind of a miss with another small school quarterback. With these quarterbacks that are not drafted in the top 10, you can kind of reach to the top 15, specifically depending on how deep the quarterback class is. Like if there's, multiples and they kind of just get pushed back 1 or 2 pick, or you see a string of 2 or 3 quarterbacks in a row, you have to take a little nuance there. But quarterbacks that do not get drafted in the top 10 have zero value insulation in Dynasty after their first season. If they're drafted in the top 10, doesn't matter what they do. Like even Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence, who historically had some of the worst rookie seasons that the NFL had ever seen, maintained at least 80% of their startup value from the moment that they entered the NFL. So meaning they were within 5 or 6 picks of their original startup value.
Mm-hmm. As someone who
after that, it's a crapshoot. Like, yes, there's hits that can happen in that first round, like Lamar Jackson's obviously, and you get Jalen Hurts in the early second. Those guys you can boost up a little bit more than 3rd, 4th round quarterbacks, sure, in your prospect profile, but the value insulation isn't there.
What would you put the odds at if Zach Wilson just completely overcomes the odds and becomes a superstar quarterback next season? What are the odds on that in Vegas?
I think there's a non-zero chance if we're being honest. Like Zach Wilson, for all intents and purposes, should have worked out.
I agree. With
like,
you. I think he still has
I'm being completely honest.
Something. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a good thing for him. All right,
Yeah.
let's get.
He is.
Sorry,
he is young. I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes like a.
But I could have said the same thing about Sam Darnold. Like, these are historically impressive prospects, but it's difficult, man. It's obviously a position that has more nuance than any other. You can only add so much analytic to it.
It's a lot of what a quarterback is what's between the ears. I think that's why Joe Burrow goes from a guy who had to transfer schools, was not really being talked about, to
wasn't very good at
national.
LSU the first 2 years either.
Yeah,
by the way.
exactly. But Zach Wilson wasn't very good in the first 2 years at BYU either. And then all of a sudden, like, he becomes Joe Burrow, and it's because of the whole swag shift that happened in LSU and in the mindset.
And I think absolutely it comes with being able to persevere through adversity. Like,
Facts.
Everybody telling Joe Burrow that he couldn't, and he was certainly never considered a 1st round draft pick. And then to have what is arguably the greatest collegiate quarterback season of all time, on way to being, the 1st overall pick. Yeah.
In hindsight,
a lot of that, comes between the ears, because he certainly didn't show anything about that. Same with Josh Allen breaking the mold of being an incredible outlier. It's that determination and dedication to actually be better than you are now.
My man is speaking facts. All right, speaking of better than you are now, King Henry, round 2, pick 45. This is the last pick we're going to be going over, and then we'll hit the remainder of the guys. But obviously, Derrick Henry, average fantasy grade C+. But look, that's
Tim,
only
you're not weighing the good grades enough. A C+ is a
no. I mean,
travesty.
I didn't wait at all. But I will say this. Obviously, it's because he had the first 2 seasons of his career he didn't start. He was completely splitting time.
Yeah, if you have issues with the average, it's because
ghost of
Tim,
a shell of DeMarco Murray. Like, what were
Tim
they
is doing the math for that.
Why? What am I supposed to weight it? It's average.
Yeah.
Average
you
over.
weight it. You take into account the amount of touches. Take into account, the situation. You got to weight it.
We need a weighted algorithm.
Like Derrick Henry clearly has to be at the least.
All right, editor.
And
all right, editor. Get started.
Disrespectful.
Get to it, editor. Come on.
Yeah, I mean he's called King Henry.
I agree.
For a reason, bro.
For a reason.
He's been
This is why I have
star.
blurbs. This is why I have blurbs. All right.
But like
the only reason Henry's career average is not much higher is because of his slow start to an NFL career, splitting reps and miscues in his first season in the NFL. I mean, but in 2008. I mean, I do mention
dynasty perspective too. I kind of understand that. If I'm giving this like we do obviously the true fantasy grade. If I was giving it a true dynasty grade, a player like Derrick Henry that got 2nd round draft capital and had the collegiate performance that he did at Alabama, and I wasn't getting production for the first 2 seasons, I would have been out. I would have sold him 100%.
There's a lot of people who were calling
100%.
Yeah, man. I remember there was some. I mean, wasn't us, but there were some people talking about like, they brought in Dion Lewis, so don't like.
Well, what do you mean? He literally played behind Dion Lewis.
That's what I mean. Like people.
Yeah, no. Tim was saying that narrative was up, like saying like, look, Dion Lewis is better than Derrick Henry.
It's like
we're saying that.
Like people are saying, like people are scared because Dion Lewis is there. It's just like, hey. But I mean, listen. Since then, when he really started, 2019 to 2022. A+ fantasy grades each of those seasons. So I mean, we don't gotta talk much about how King Henry is one of the best to ever do it. And look, he's there's got some
Dominant.
trade rumors. You think he gets traded this offseason? I think he gets traded. Personally, I think it makes too much sense.
I kind
Although
of do as well,
the Jeffrey Simmons
especially the
contract
Titans'
does
history.
change that a little bit, though.
I don't think he does, just because he's
Yeah.
like he is the Tennessee Titans. You know,
They
We'll see.
they just gave Jeffrey Simmons, their defensive tackle, a big contract. So
I also think the Titans in a rebuilding phase, like legitimately from a business standpoint, like they already the fans already drove the GM out of town. Like I don't think that they can get rid of Derrick Henry and expect to keep a generation of fans around and happy. Like it's still a business when it comes down to things. There's a reason that players get paid certain contracts. It's not necessarily to win games, but it is to sell tickets.
I think while that is the case, I think that if you're looking at it from a purely football strategy perspective, this is probably going to be
Should've
the
traded him
highest.
years ago.
I mean, I don't think so, because you're a contender the last few years, but I think like his highest value in terms of trade value is going to be right now. Like there's a chance that he falls off a cliff next year just because of his age and the tread in his tires. He's been playing for 7 seasons now. I don't think that he completely falls off, but he has been injured 2 of the last 3 seasons. There's something to be said about that. So, if you can trade him to like the Bills, like Derrick Henry on the Bills,
that's where I wanted Saquon to.
bro. Derrick Henry on the Bills would be incredible.
I mean,
There is something to be said about that touch threshold, though, and we did mention it with Zeke as well, right? Like, there's only so much tread on the tires, and you usually see it around those multi 300 carry seasons. As soon as that happens, and it's almost like clockwork with NFL running backs. It's not even necessarily an age thing. It's legitimately like a mileage thing almost. And you just start to see the wear and tear break down. That's what happens when you put yourself in front of behemoths moving at 30 miles an hour 300 times in 17 weeks.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to sum it up right there. Speaking of summing it up, obviously some big hits at the running back position in this draft. No hits at the wide receiver position. Quarterback production. But let's get into the rest of the rounds. So I'm going to go through round 2 through 5 because there was no one fantasy relevant in 6 and 7.
Hits. My man hating on Michael Thomas here. Literally like the greatest rookie season for.
I didn't say no. I didn't say no.
Tim, you paused after no hits. He then said in round 6 and 7.
Oh yeah, my bad.
I was equally furious.
I didn't say no.
Okay,
there's giant hits here. In fact, this is the second draft where.
My bad.
Look, there's some guys here that can be said that to be the best dynasty pick in this draft, even over Zeke or over Derrick Henry. There's something to be said about a couple of these guys. And this is the second draft in a row where you're probably better off drafting guys in your dynasty draft that went in day
second or third
2 and 3.
Yeah. Oh, facts. Yeah. 100%.
All
right, Tim. Stop making the people wait, for crying out loud. Oh, here comes a coughing fit, Mr. Sick.
No, I'm not sick anymore. It's just lingering.
Yeah, I feel you. The lingering cough is one of the worst parts about getting a cold, because you feel perfectly fine and then you're coughing, and now, especially like after COVID, everyone looking at you like you're like this disgusting human.
Especially it's allergy season right now. It was.
I mean, I'm guilty doing that. If someone coughs near me, I'm like, yo, no.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. The worst is when there's like an incredibly sick child playing it with the other children. Like, yo, keep your kid home for a day or two. This kid's incredibly sick. Keep him away from my fucking kid.
That kid is essentially a petri dish of death.
Yeah, I just got hit by the petri dish of death 2 weeks ago. All right. With that being said, round 2: Hunter Henry, Sterling Shepard, Michael Thomas, and Tyler Boyd. Woo! Matt, talk about Michael Thomas, your boy. Take it away. Obviously, a giant hit here.
I mean, yeah, coming from the pipeline of Ohio State, we kind of should have seen it coming, but even the NFL and many people didn't, because of the stacked offenses that they create at that school. It's kind of like, the Chris Olave effect, being a little bit behind Garrett Wilson, or the Terry McLaurin effect, or the Jackson Smith and Jigba effect. When a college offense, there's only one ball to go around, so you get these a little bit lower market shares, but when you're dominating at such a high level obviously you should have taken into consideration. And yeah, Michael Thomas had never been anything but a wide receiver one when he stepped onto the field. One of the greatest rookie seasons that a wide receiver has ever had, top 12 in points per game, continuing it on with 3 top 10 seasons to one of the greatest wide receiver one seasons of all time, breaking the reception record. I mean, that's arguably the best wide receiver picked, except that there's another guy a little bit later that's still doing it.
I mean, the guy you're talking about later might be the best pick of this draft. But let's not get to
Yeah.
him yet. Let's go to round 3. Kenyon Drake, Michael's guy. Kenyon, according to Michael. Tight end Austin Hooper and quarterback Jacoby Brissett. So, Austin Hooper had some pretty good years with the Falcons.
Hey, Jacoby Brissett was better than Deshaun Watson last year. So
Austin Hooper had a phenomenal rookie tight end season, by the way. For like rookie tight ends
and sophomore
real good
season.
Yeah.
He should have just stayed
Hooper
in
was
Atlanta.
kind of legit. He should have stayed in Atlanta.
All downhill from there.
They have Kyle Pitts there now who hey Kyle, you gonna do anything? Round 4.
Maybe Kyle Pitts is the tight end version of Derrick Henry. You know, first 2 seasons, it's like, oh, come on. Except Derrick Henry definitely dropped way more in value than Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts has done
For sure.
has had minimal production entering
Super
his 3rd
insulated.
year, and people are drafting him in the 1st round in tight end premium league still.
Yep, super
Like, I
insulated.
legit see him going like the 1st round in
people will trade
FFPC
Bijan for him
dynasty
straight
leagues.
up. Yeah,
It's crazy.
people will trade Bijan for him straight up for sure.
I don't have the balls. I don't have the balls for that.
No way. All right. Let's get into round 4. Tyler Higbee and Dak Prescott. I think
That's a
Dakota.
phenomenal pick.
in my opinion, the jewel of this draft. I mean, when you find a
Yeah.
franchise quarterback in the 4th round, that's the jewel of the draft. Zeke and Dak in this draft is an incredible draft for the Cowboys that obviously set their franchise for the next
One of their best drafts in their history
until
And that's
present.
saying something.
Yeah. So yeah, Matt, you want to talk a little about Dak?
I mean, especially when you're talking superflex leagues, and obviously dynasty is primarily viewed through a superflex lens. It gives you a little bit more depth and a little bit more nuance, whereas 1 QB dynasty leagues, like QBs really don't hold any value unless they're top 3. So that's why you play superflex. But that said, like Dak Prescott would have been a 2nd, maybe 3rd round pick in rookie drafts and his startups, and he was obviously sitting behind and wasn't really expected to do anything. I think he had a really great senior year. Obviously, that pushed up his draft capital into the realm of getting selected in the NFL at all. But when you have a quarterback that late and you can hit on something like that, even in like specifically dynasty drafts, that's why once you're past the 1st round, guys like Will Levis obviously hold a little bit more risk because you have to spend a top 10 pick on them. But once you're past the 2nd round, I've got no issue drafting guys like Hendon Hooker and whoever, you name it, if they get selected by an NFL team like the Brock Purdy's of the world. I've got no issue immediately after the 2nd, because the simple payoff for that investment is so much more than even a running back that hits in the 2nd round. It obviously has nuance to depending on how deep the class is. Sometimes you have guys that are 1st round talents slipping to the 2nd round just because it's a really deep offensive class.
That was fire. Guys. Michael, what about you? Come on, man. Dak. Because Dak.
I think the anti-Dak hive out there, for some reason, Dak Prescott gets a shit ton of hate, and people think he's like this
Insane pick.
Actually good NFL quarterback. Just absolutely blows my mind. Literally 30 NFL teams would probably take Dak Prescott in a heartbeat.
So
Bills and Chiefs wouldn't, and I think you're probably right.
Yeah,
maybe the Eagles because they hate him so much,
and Jalen Hurts, but like a lot of teams will happily take.
Oh yeah,
Dak
I mean,
Prescott,
there's
like,
an obvious
as
few
they
that wouldn't,
should.
but legitimately, yeah, there's nobody that wouldn't. And it's contract specific too. There's nobody that wouldn't accrue that contract.
I feel like it's funny because Dak has a lot of Tony Romo in him. You know, he hasn't been able to win the big game, but he puts up the incredible stats, and he's obviously a franchise quarterback, and he's obviously elite at times, but is a little turnover pro at times. It's like the Cowboys went from Tony Romo to Tony Romo.
Cowboys' biggest incompetence is always and always will be their coaching. It's like they haven't gotten it right since Tom Landry.
Think about the Cowboys too. Like now that I mention it, in terms of their coaching, they haven't gotten right, but in terms of drafting quarterbacks late, Tony Romo was an undrafted free agent who was a starter.
Cowboys are some of the best drafters in NFL history. Just period.
That's
at
why
every position. That's genuinely true.
Let's get into. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go backwards. I'm gonna go with the undrafted, and then I'm gonna go round 5 because we'll end it off at round 5. Undrafted was J.D. McKissick, chosen Robbie Anderson, and Peyton Barber. their running back. So those are guys who have had some success in the NFL.
JD's had a really solid NFL career, and it's kind of, at his peak was a PPR cheat code for your flex spot for a bit. So I think that's a phenomenal pickup.
Yeah, shout out JD McKissick.
He always is. Yeah. It's just that he's hurt all the time because he's so small.
Well, as of late, yeah.
In round 5, 2 big hits, one more long-term, one short-term. Running back Jordan Howard for the Bears, putting together some good fantasy seasons. And wide receiver, the jewel of the draft in the 5th round, Tyreek Hill, who is still...
Yeah, that's probably the best pick of the whole draft.
Yeah, who is still tearing... I would say Dak Prescott in the 4th round is the best pick, but wide receiver... But Tyreek Hill, very, very, very...
I think it is... Just generally, QB is more important. But if you were a team like who had Patrick Mahomes, who obviously didn't need to draft Dak Prescott, they drafted Tyreek Hill instead. Tyreek Hill is definitely the best pick in the draft.
All right, Michael, talk more about it, bro.
I mean, Tyreek Hill's a monster. What else do we need to say about Tyreek Hill? This guy went to Miami away from Patrick Mahomes and had an even better year. From getting passes from Tua and whoever the backups, Bryson Hopkins and whoever else was throwing the ball.
Skylar Thompson.
Yeah, Skylar Thompson, not Bryson Hopkins. I'm thinking.
And Teddy for, I think it was 2 plays before Teddy got concussed. Yeah. And like, what?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about Tyreek Hill. He's a Hall of Famer too.
Consistent top of true target value as well. So it wasn't just a product of Mahomes. Obviously, Mahomes is going to boost the true target value of every single receiver he throws to, but Tyreek Hill consistently being at the top while he was producing wide receiver numbers should have told us that it was more of a product of the player than the players around him specifically, and obviously going to Miami. And that's kind of why I was leaning for him to be one of the better picks from a fantasy perspective specifically when I said the best pick of the draft. Is you have a guy that is now turning 29 and is still putting up wide receiver 1 numbers on a different team at the back end of his career and has given you 7 wide receiver 1 seasons. Like, that is everything you want in a dynasty wide receiver. He's extended 2 different win now windows for every manager that's held on to him. If you're talking about his career longevity, right? Like, he's produced 2 3-year windows for managers where you can move pieces around him to win your championship. And you don't get that from anyone.
I mean, if you drafted Tyreek Hill that 1 year where you got him on super discount because he was suspended the first 2 games, you probably won the championship that year. By the way, Tyreek Hill, 6 straight seasons of at least an A- fantasy grade, and 4 of those were A+ years.
Tyreek Hill was one of my biggest hits on the waiver wire for the patrons that year. When he was still 0% rostered in Yahoo, I saw him make a couple big plays. I was like, this guy's nasty. I told him to pick him up. Yeah. And he started blowing up.
Patreon.com/BrotoFantasy. Great segue there, Michael. Also, this article will be available on the website soon. Very, very soon. And yeah, Matt, where can they find you?
You can find me at PsychWardFF and cooking up all this great content for Broto Fantasy at Broto Fantasy FF. Or wait, did I mess that up? It's not at FF.
At Broto Fantasy. No, and he whispered the FF too. At Broto Fantasy FF.
Yeah, because I forgot.
Faded away. Into
no.
At BrotoFantasy.com.
Into my thing. Let me distract them.
Yeah,
Michael, where can they find you?
If you're watching on YouTube, you could read the little ledger we have here. Otherwise, at BrotoFF Mike.
I will say, historically, way more people listening than watching. So we have to keep that in mind, even though we're watching.
Correct.
We're new to YouTube. So go check us out if you haven't seen us on YouTube yet. YouTube.com/.
Like, subscribe, download, click that bell for notifications to get all of it up to minute.
Matt is Matt is short, circuiting. He's in a simulation.
I know my promo brain's not as good as yours.
Yeah, Tim, we're supposed to be here. We're supposed to be done recording by this time. Okay, it's all your fault.
Yeah. Anyway, at BrotoFF Tim, at BrotoFF Jason, at BrotoFF Casanova, at FF by Broto for the app.
That's the one.
Yes, that's the one. At Broto Fantasy. I don't know what's going on with Twitter, to be honest. I don't know how long Twitter is going to be our primary source of information, but go check us out on Instagram.
Follow us there and give us some chat. Anyway.
Tim's going all Elon Musk on us right now.
No, it's just that they're at.
He does kind of make a good point.
On the 15th, they're gonna change the whole thing.
Are they?
You can pop in my DMs and I'll hit you up with some fantasy knowledge.
I haven't keeping up with any of that Elon Musk bullshit with Twitter.
BrotoFantasy.com. That's
Yeah,
the place.
that's where it's at.
Yeah. With
Or
that
the
being
app.
said, yeah. All right, guys. Now there's one more question I have to ask before we leave, and this is the most important question of them all.
True.
If you had to
It always
never
is.
eat one of these things ever again,
Okay.
which one would it be?
Never eat it again.
Never eat
Okay.
again.
Okay.
Meat.
Oh,
All meats.
okay. Well, I'm not
Chocolate.
choosing that.
I mean, I'm pretty sure
Chocolate.
Matt
Okay. All
doesn't eat-
chocolate.
All chocolate. All chocolate. And then finally, garlic.
Matt, am I bugging or are you like vegan? Or
No,
am
I'm
I
not
bugging?
vegan.
That is
What
not
the heck?
even close to
Or have
vegan.
you no, have you done the
Oh,
vegan stretch?
yeah.
Yeah,
There you go, Mike. Yeah,
Okay.
I did for a long time because of Roy
There you go.
Choi.
Yeah.
Roy Choi.
Yeah,
I don't know
Tim,
how-
obviously the answer
famous
is
Korean
meat.
chef, and he. Yeah, the answer's
said obviously the answer
I
is
need
meat?
garlic.
The answer's
It's a
g-
joke, Tim. The answer's garlic. I love garlic, but whatever.
Nah, you
the
need
answer's
garlic.
garlic.
The answer's
Ah,
garlic?
The answer's chocolate.
Chocolate is the answer.
This is coming from a guy who doesn't like chocolate.
Listen,
Tim,
as
you're
a guy who
stupid.
doesn't
Obviously,
live
you
life eating chocolate, tell me.
Actually, let's be real. I
Chocolate.
do eat
Chocolate.
garlic.
Yeah, I could do it without chocolate. I
lot.
could do it without chocolate.
I eat garlic a lot more often than chocolate. Tim didn't even. Oh
Didn't even
man,
end the recording. He
Tim
thought it was
didn't
gonna
end the
work.
recording. He just x'd out StreamYard, people. All right, see you guys
Peace
next
out, guys.
week.